This video is part 5 in a series that provides an overview of the National Folklore Archive Initiative, NFAI, and an introduction to the function and content of its Folklore Collections Database, the FCD. Video 5, Describing Your Collection, Entity Records and Name Authorities. Once you've created your repository record, you're ready to begin entering information about your collection. The first step in entering a collection is to create records for all of the entities associated with it. In this video, we'll be discussing entity records, what constitutes an entity, and what we mean by name authorities. In the next video in the series, we'll go over how one creates entity records. An entity is an organization, individual, or meeting that created or contributed to the creation of the archival collection being described. An entity can also be a repository or individual that had custody of the collection in the past. For the purposes of this video, we're going to focus our discussion on the 3 types of entities available in the FCD: organization, meeting, and individual. An organization is any group of people or individual person working under a collective name. Examples of organizations can include schools, nonprofit organizations, musical groups, ethnic heritage organizations, or any organized body of people. A meeting is an organized gathering of people that created or contributed to the creation of an archival collection. Examples of meetings can include conferences, festivals, concert series, and even semi-formal gatherings like jam sessions. In terms of FCD, an individual is a fairly straightforward concept. It's a person responsible for the creation of archival content, or a person who has contributed to the creation of archival content. Here are some examples of names that appear in the system. Although naming conventions do vary between cultures, when referring to an individual or group, a name is a name, right? Well, the name on my birth certificate is Andrew Arthur Kolovas, but most people call me Andy. On professional papers, I use the name Andy. My middle name is Arthur. What name would you use for me in the FCD? In many cases, the version of a name you should use is the version preferred by the individual him or herself, or the version by which a person is commonly known. However, in the case of individuals or organizations or meetings who have work cataloged by the Library of Congress, you should use the authorized version of the name. The bold versions of the names here are the versions of the names of these individuals as they appear in the Library of Congress Name Authority file. As far as Library of Congress catalogers are concerned, I am Andy Kolovas. What is the Name Authority file? The Library of Congress maintains a list of standardized versions of names of individuals and corporate bodies for use when cataloging items in the library's collections. The idea is that by having a standardized version of a name, catalogers will be able to consistently use the same form of a name when describing materials created by a specific individual or group. Name authority records in the Library of Congress's Name Authority file often contain additional biographical details on the person to which the established version of the name refers, such as a date of birth and death, lists of publications, and other descriptive information. As an example, we'll search for the Name Authority record for AFS Executive Director Tim Lloyd. As you can see, there's several Timothy and Tim Lloyds in the system. Let's start with the first one that came up, Lloyd Timothy Charles.
Looking through this record, we can see a variant on the name, Lloyd Timothy, 1951, a date of birth, 1951-08-25, and a list of sources, including a bibliographic guide to Ohio folklife, Lake Erie fishermen, folklife resources in the Library of Congress. Since I happen to know the year of Tim's birth and the titles of his publications, I know the version of the name, Lloyd Timothy Charles, refers to Tim Lloyd the folklorist. When Library of Congress catalogers describe books or archival materials created by Tim, they will use Lloyd Timothy Charles as the version of the name, so that patrons searching the collections are clear which Tim Lloyd is the creator of the work.
So that's the basics of what we mean by name authorities and entity records. Entity records are used to describe individuals or groups who created or contributed to the creation of archival materials you will be describing in the FCD. Name authorities are standardized versions of the names of individuals or groups that have been established by the Library of Congress so that cataloging can be consistent. Most likely, the majority of entities you describe in the FCD probably won't have a name authority record, although some, particularly those with published works, might. If you determine that an entity does have a name authority record, you should use that version of the name in the FCD. If you determine that an entity you're describing doesn't have a name authority record, you should use that person or organization or meeting's preferred name, or the name by which he, she, or it is commonly known. In the next two videos, we'll go over how you create entity records in the FCD and provide some advice on how to confirm if an entity you are describing has a name authority record.